From Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Hana Zubairi. First, the headlines. Top Republicans rub shoulders with Islamophobes. Extremists in secretive right-wing group. Leak reveals. Democrats are busy uniting themselves on President Biden's agenda. The United States estimates 2 million youth vapers as regulator nears key decision. Over 2,000 health facilities shuttered in Afghanistan, says the Red Cross. And a 1,400-year-old mosque in India is about to be reopened. The Crown Prince of Dubai declares Expo 2020 open in an extravagant show. Now for our top news tonight. Elite Republicans, wealthy entrepreneurs, media moguls, and pillars of the conservative movement rub shoulders with anti-Muslim extremists. These comprise the members of the Secretive Council for National Policy, according to a leaked document. The Southern Poverty Law Center, which monitors right-wing hate groups, describes the council as a shadowy and intensely secretive group. Leaders of organizations listed as anti-Muslim hate groups by Southern Poverty Law Center include Frank Gaffney, Bridget Gabriel, and Tony Perkins, who are well-known Islamophobes. According to reports, the council's members are forbidden from revealing their affiliation or the group's name. Though the U.S. Congress has averted a government shutdown, a default is still a risk. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said that the agency might have a few days of cash left after the October 18 debt limit deadline. Yellen said she would rather repeal the borrowing cap entirely. Meanwhile, Senator Joe Manchin, a key holdout on President Joe Biden's $3.5 trillion plan, said that he supported a $1.5 trillion social safety net bill. More than 2 million American middle and high schoolers say they are vaping, a survey shows. 8 in 10 are using flavored e-cigarettes, according to a government report released Thursday. The latest figure for youth vapers represents a dip from 3.6 million in 2020. The decline could be partly driven by social isolation and limited access to vaping products during the COVID-19 pandemic. Meanwhile, the Food and Drug Administration has ruled on whether some e-cigarette products can remain on the market. However, it delayed action on Juul, which accounts for 40% of the market. There's finally good news from India. While Hindu extremists are destroying mosques and churches, Muslims in southern India are busy restoring the oldest mosque in India, which goes back 1,400 years. More details here by Saleha Farooq and Atif Shafiq.
There is a mosque in India that was built while the Prophet Muhammad was still alive. God's peace and blessings be upon the Prophet. This oldest mosque in India is about to be reopened. Chiraman Jum'a Mosque was built in 629 CE. That is 3 years before the Prophet left this world. It is the oldest mosque in India, situated in Kerala. Kerala at the time was an independent kingdom. Kerala was an international trade center connected with Arabia. Arabs used to call it Malay, later Malabar. The story of this mosque is connected with its Hindu king, Cheraman Perumal Rama. The king learned Islam from the Muslim traders. He became Muslim and went to meet the Prophet. Here is Imam Adam Kelwick, next to his gravesite in Oman.
He became one of the companions of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who sat with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who talked with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who ate with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we have very little reference to this story in the Sahih Ahadith. However, there is one mention mentioned by Al-Bukhari which this Indian king visits Al-Medina, and he gifts the Prophet ﷺ some pickled ginger, which is one of the specialities, even till this day, of the people of Kerala. The Prophet ﷺ took it and he ate from it, and he gave it and shared it with the rest of his companions.
While returning from his trip back to India, he passed away in Salallah, Oman. May Allah be pleased with him. This is his grave. The rest of the party continued their journey back to Kerala with his letters. It is said among them was Malik bin Dinar. May Allah be pleased with him. He built this mosque with the help of other Muslims. It was the first mosque of Kerala and one of the oldest mosques in the world. The mosque has recently gone through renovation and expansion, and it is now ready to reopen. The upper portion of the masjid will be open for tourists. The underground hall will be used exclusively for prayer. The mosque can accommodate 5,000 people in the prayer hall. Besides the old structure, an Islamic Heritage Museum is also on site. May Allah accept the efforts of all who for 1,400 years have kept this masjid going.
The US journal Science on Thursday issued a rare editorial calling for scientists to fight back against COVID misinformation proliferating on Facebook. Editor-in-chief H. Holden Thorpe wrote that the pandemic had revealed the scientific community's shocking ineptness at conveying messages about masks, vaccinations, or the dangers of consuming horse drugs and aquarium cleaners. The former chemistry professor said social media has been skillfully exploited by anti-science forces. To combat misinformation, practicing scientists or skilled science communicators need to speak up, he said. US lawmakers on Thursday demanded pledges from Facebook to address concerns over its platform's impact on teens' mental health. Senators grilled the social media giant about damning reports that Facebook's own research warned of the harm Instagram can do to teenage girls' well-being. The Pentagon is relying on airstrikes to prevent a resurgence of Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. Experts and some lawmakers are skeptical about the effectiveness of the so-called over-the-horizon strategy. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin told the House Armed Services Committee on Wednesday that over-the-horizon operations are difficult but absolutely possible. His remarks came 2 weeks after the Pentagon chief was forced to apologize to the relatives of civilians killed in an August 29 drone strike in Kabul. It was the latest in a long line of US drone strikes that caused civilian casualties in Afghanistan, becoming one of the most contentious issues over the 20-year war and prompting harsh criticism from Afghans. Afghanistan's health system is on the verge of collapse, a top Red Cross official warned Thursday. More than 2,000 health facilities have been shuttered across the conflict-ravaged country. The International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies warned a dire lack of funding is pushing Afghanistan's health system to the brink. Alexander Mathia, the Federation's Asia-Pacific director, told AFP that more than 20,000 health workers in the country are no longer working or working without pay. More than 7,000 of them are women. The World Health Organization warned last week less than a fifth of the country's health facilities remain fully functional, and 2/3 of them have run out of essential medicine. A detailed analysis on Afghanistan's health crisis is coming up later on tonight on our show, so keep watching Muslim News. The Alhan's chances of winning a 5th International Horse Racing Award increased Thursday for his horse Tarnawa. The Alhan last won the iconic race in 2008. These horse races are part of the gambling industry. The Alhan operates a large horse racing and breeding operation at his estate in the town of Gouvieux in France. The Alhan, or Prince Shah Karim al-Husseini, is the 49th Imam of Ismailis within Shia Islam. Forbes magazine in the past has listed him as one of the world's richest royals, with most of his money coming from voluntary cash donations from his followers. Ismailis reportedly donate at least 10% of their gross annual income to the spiritual leader. Sudanese protesters rallied in support of a civilian-led transition to democracy in the capital, Khartoum. A transitional government and a civilian military sovereign council have been running the African nation since 2019, after the ouster of autocrat Omar al-Bashir. Sudan has endured decades of corruption and stringent U.S. sanctions. The U.S. removed Sudan from its blacklist for state sponsors of terrorism in December of 2020. That opened the door to much-needed aid and financial investment. Israel's top diplomat Yair Lapid made a landmark visit Thursday to Bahrain to open the Israeli embassy a year after U.S. brokered normalization of ties. The Israeli foreign minister arrived at Manama airport over an hour before a Gulf Air A320 took off in the opposite direction. It was the first commercial flight between the two countries. Crew members waved the flags of Bahrain and Israel from cockpit windows as the passenger jet landed at Ben Gurion Airport near Tel Aviv. The accords broke with decades of Arab consensus to have no relations with Israel, while the Palestinian sovereignty question remains unresolved. Protesters angered by the accords burnt tires on the outskirts of Manama early Thursday. The hashtag Bahrain rejects Zionist in Arabic was circulating on social media. Palestinians took part in the funeral for Ala Zayud in his village of Silat al-Harithiyah, east of Jenin in the occupied West Bank. The 22-year-old Zayud was a member of the military wing of the Islamic Jihad group. He was reportedly killed in clashes with Israeli forces. The violence came days after an Israeli raid in the occupied West Bank left 5 Palestinians dead. 3 Palestinians were killed Thursday by Israeli fire, including a woman who tried to stab officers in Jerusalem. The other 2 were a man shot during West Bank's clashes and a Gazan who approached the border fence. Iran's army will conduct maneuvers near Azerbaijan's border starting Friday, state media announced. It will involve armored units, artillery, drones, and military helicopters, the Army's Ground Forces Commander General Omar Haidari told IRNA news agency. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev criticized Tehran over the drills in an interview with Turkish news agency Anadolu. Aliyev questioned the timing and location of Iran's military drills. Iran's foreign ministry spokesman Saeed Khatibzadeh rebuffed Aliyev's comments and criticized Azerbaijan's close relations with Israel. Israel is a major supplier of arms to Azerbaijan. Iran and Azerbaijan share a border of around 430 miles. Dubai convened its Expo 2020 Thursday with an extravagant opening ceremony of fireworks and lights display. The domed Al Wasl Plaza is the centerpiece of the vast expo site. It was lit by spectacular projections as Crown Prince Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum declared the $7 billion event open. A parkour park created by 3D printing is opening in Prague, capital of the Czech Republic. The construction method allows for the free shaping of concrete. It does not require the building of complicated single-use molds.
A na to rovnou prvku, který tady to hřiště poskytuje, tak je tato díra uprostřed. A já jsem teďka dodal takové úkoly, jestli by...
Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment. So stay tuned and we'll be back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Our fellow Americans.
Right now, the COVID-19 vaccines are available to millions of Americans.
And soon, they will be available to everyone.
The science is clear. These vaccines will protect you and those you love from this dangerous and deadly disease.
They could save your life.
So we urge you to get vaccinated when it's available to you.
That's the first step to ending the pandemic and moving our country forward. It's up to you.
I am what hunger looks like in America. I am an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for the last day of school. Because this may be the last time I'll have lunch. Till September. I am a single father of 2 who works 3 part-time jobs. And that's still not enough to put food on the table. I was created by artificial intelligence from faces of the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger.
Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back to the show. To discuss the health crisis in Afghanistan, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
Thank you so much, Hina. Afghanistan, whole America was interested in airlifting people. People raised millions of dollars airlifting people. So 100,000 plus people came out. And then that was the end of the story. What about close to 40 million people who are left behind? And what, people are all busy, pro-Taliban, anti-Taliban, dialogue, no dialogue, things like that. Fact of the matter is we are talking about a whole lot of people, 40 million people. And currently the news started coming out about healthcare situation. Yesterday, International Red Cross person, after a 4-day visit to Afghanistan, depicted a very dire situation. He said 2,000 healthcare centers are already shut down. And for months, people have not been paid. So focus on people, which is missing. So we have someone whose focus is on people, specifically healthcare of people, Dr. Nadia Aksir. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Welcome to Muslim Network TV. Dr. Nadi Aksir is at the Johns Hopkins Bloomsburg School of Public Health as a physician and a scholar. Tell us, what is the situation of healthcare right now in Afghanistan?
Thank you so much for having me and for addressing this important topic on your show. Really, the situation is exactly as you've stated. It's a dire healthcare situation for the Afghan people. These Afghans have been essentially abandoned after 20 years of foreign intervention in the country from the World Bank and many other donors who've come in and stated that they care about Afghan basic human rights and therefore spent time there and resources there developing the healthcare system. And after doing this for 2 decades almost, the political situation changed and the donors have just dropped out. And because of that, there's no money. So without money, the health facilities cannot run, people are not getting paid, the essential commodities that the people need are not available and not accessible. And not to mention the other issues going on with mobility and women's empowerment in the country that limit women's access to health facilities, even if they were in place. And amidst all of that, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. There are about 3 million COVID vaccines that are sitting unadministered in fridges in Kabul, which are going to essentially be unusable within a matter of weeks. So this is the situation. And on top of that, there has been a brain drain. There has been a health professional brain drain in Afghanistan and during the Soviet invasion, also prior to that, and now again. So health professionals have left, many of them among the 100,000 that evacuated, and the ones who are currently there are too scared to go to work, are not getting paid. So they're not going to work. And this is it. Essentially, Afghanistan's healthcare system has essentially collapsed within a matter of weeks. And ultimately, the ones, the individuals who are suffering are the civilians, the children who need the vaccines, the mothers who need to go get that prenatal care visit, and, just the poor population of that country.
It is in some newspaper, I have read that people were not even being paid several months before Taliban took over. So there seems to be a crisis which was already there, and suddenly everything was left on Taliban, who know nothing but fight, to administer that. So why people were not being paid even before Taliban took over?
Has always been vulnerable. It's been there, it's been donor funded, and it hasn't gone without its complications. It hasn't been an easy ride. So as an example, the World Bank, who has been coordinating the healthcare system and funding it for a long time, they've been struggling with how to channel funds to the NGOs who are actually delivering healthcare services in Afghanistan. What is the model they want to use? So they're constantly learning and trying to improve on that model. And because of this, there have been delays in contracts given to NGOs. And because of that, NGOs don't have money to pay their health workers to come to work. And so this has been the situation in Afghanistan, and it's something, it's a very vulnerable context. The health system is vulnerable. It's something that the donors have been trying to work on improving, and getting these contracts out in a meaningful way, in a timely way, in a way where it can get to you will edit this, but into the hands of the NGOs who need it, so they can pay their staff, purchase the commodities, pay for the infrastructure, and so on. But there have been delays in that process, and because of that, people haven't been getting paid for months. On top of that, the insecurity situation in Afghanistan has been also volatile for many, many years. And in the months leading up to the Taliban taking over, it has been especially heightened. Conflict, insecurity, bombings, and violence just all over the country had been heightened. And those are some of the reasons why people, the monies were not going to the NGOs that needed them, and people were not getting paid.
In a post which you have made along with other health professionals, you say 80% of the funding was coming from European Union, USAID, and World Bank. Mm-hmm. And of course, you mentioned all of those people have stopped funding, and not that the situation was good even before that. And you suggest that maybe NGOs and organizations who are taking care of health of people need to be directly funded by NGOs and individuals around the world. But at the same time, Dr. Aksir, there is a big talk, even in the House of Representatives yesterday and Senate before, that Afghanistan government collapsed because of corruption. So do you see the same level of corruption is in the NGOs and the entities which individuals and organization in America can feel free to support and help?
Absolutely. I think corruption is a really big problem in Afghanistan. And in fact, when you compare Afghanistan to other countries in the world, on a metric called the Transparency Index, which looks at corruption across the world, Afghanistan is ranked one of the highest countries, tied with a couple others, in corruption. And that has been happening for years. So absolutely, corruption is a huge problem in Afghanistan at all levels, though, at the highest level of government, but also, down the stream at the local level, too. Corruption exists in local markets and all the way up the chain. So corruption is a widespread problem in Afghanistan. And that means it's also an issue with the NGOs. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why the World Bank and these donors have been hesitant and delaying contracts to NGOs, because they're unclear on how the monies are being used. The transparency is not there. Accountability is poor. And so there are a range of different issues on why the funding had been delayed as it was. And I think those issues still exist. We did make the suggestion that if the donors did not want to work with the new government directly, they could contract the NGOs, but they would need to do that with some accountability metrics in place. They would need close coordination with these NGOs on the ground to make sure that the money is really going to the services and the commodities that the people need. So absolutely, I think corruption is a problem, but I do think it's something that needs to be addressed because the people need the healthcare services. So there needs to be ways around this.
Doctors Without Borders have been in Afghanistan since the 1980s. And it's a pretty reputable organizations in their system and processes. And in terms of Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh, I have visited them multiple times. They are essentially the sole provider of health services. Can their operation, because people in America around the world will have confidence on Doctors Without Borders, it is a known entity. And they probably are employing a whole lot of Afghans in their work as well. And if 2,000 clinic is shut down and they can scale their operation, probably more individual would like to fund Doctors Without Borders. So would you think that is one model in which individuals who are watching our program can contribute?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, at this point in time, we need all hands on deck. Any innovations and models that we can use with people, so long as they're willing to go to Afghanistan. That's one thing we need to consider as well. It's not the safest and most secure place to be at the moment, and there's a lot of uncertainty. But so long as Doctors Without Borders or other health professionals are willing to go, it's absolutely a model that we should try, because the situation changes by the hour in Afghanistan. There's no time to think and to test out different models or think about what's going to be most ideal. I think if people want to go and can go, they should absolutely go. Obviously, keeping in mind that safety and security is a concern. I'll also say that I think bringing a new player into the game, into Afghanistan, in terms of a group who can deliver healthcare services, might be challenging in that, the existing NGOs that are there, they've been there for decades. They have established relationships with the community. They have an understanding with the local people, and they have a trust. And they understand the culture and the context, and they also understand the needs of that particular community, because Afghanistan is very diverse. There are 34 provinces, many different cultures, ethnicities, languages. These things influence people's health. And those NGOs that are there, they're very well versed in their communities where they exist. And they also have a trust with them. So they understand the needs of those communities very well. Again, I think in a longer, for a more sustainable model, in the next year or so, efforts should really focus on working with those NGOs that are there, that exist, to help them protect the continuity of services. And in the meantime, I think Doctors Without Borders and other groups who can provide immediate care in the humanitarian crises should absolutely make efforts to go.
Are there some physicians here in the United States with the Afghan heritage or people who know the area can come up with a task force which authoritatively issues a list of, say, here are the 10, 20 well-established, well-respected organizations who are taking care of healthcare, who could be funded? I mean, at this moment, you know, in America, Muslims have hundreds of charities, and they contribute, just Muslims' contribution in charity to the countries they come from is close to $5-6 billion a year. And there are people who would love to contribute, but at this moment, nobody seems to know. Everybody is talking about politics, not people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on the head. You know, absolutely. There is a huge diaspora community around the world of Afghans who have left Afghanistan at some point in time, including myself, trained abroad, who are now skilled professionals, and we want to give back to Afghanistan. We want to help. And I absolutely think there's a role for us to play, to come together, to think about what are the needs of the people of Afghanistan, especially for health at this moment. What are our resources that we have? And to come together and come up with a plan. You know, lots of people I know are doing fundraisers, their own way of giving back. But I think one thing that's missing is coordination. These efforts need to be coordinated. And I think we can have a much bigger impact if, like you said, there was a council or there was some kind of task force, a coordinating body that can bring the diaspora together in the USA, in Canada, really all over the world where Afghans have gone, bring us together and say, okay, what are the priorities of the Afghan people? We all care. We all want to help. Let's bring our resources together, our experience, our expertise, our skills, and think about how we can use these to give back and help the Afghan people immediately, and then also in the long term.
Dr. Aksir, what can people do to deal with this situation in which focus primarily is on politics and Taliban, and we don't want to talk to them, we don't want to deal with them and hold their money, while there are people who are urgently in need of help? I mean, can the US government and the Canadian government and the European Union, they figure out how to help directly with these people who need help? I mean, what is possible? I mean, can the conversation focus on people and providing help them directly instead of being blocked by the ideological fight with the Taliban?
Absolutely. I mean, that is the goal. That is the vision. You know, I think these groups such as the World Bank and other donors, they often, their whole agenda and mandate for their organizations are based around basic human rights for people and giving people access to basic health care. And so I think these organizations need to really think to themselves, you know, what are we missing here? Why are we getting caught up in the politics when we should be focused on the people and their health and their human rights? You know, step back and really think about their vision and their goal for their organization before they get caught up in the politics. And I think that's an important step that needs to happen. Right now, there is a lot of confusion, you know, among donors because they don't know, they don't trust the new government. They don't know if they should trust the new government. Because of that, they are hesitant to continue sending funds and so on. And that's an understandable concern. However, at the same time, you know, the people of the country are suffering. And that's something that they need to be thinking about seriously and thinking about, you know, what does our organization do? Oh, that's right. We protect basic human rights. And that's what they should be focusing on mostly, not the politics. They're not politicians. Their role is to help, you know, many of these donors to help development and health and growth in countries. And I think the organizations need to step back and really think about that. And then alongside, you know, come together and be innovative in thinking about how they can actually deliver healthcare services. It's not enough to say it's too difficult or we don't want to give money to the new government. There has to be other ways. You know, this is 2021. We can be innovative. We can be creative. We can think of new ways to get in there and to get resources to protect the people.
Well, thank you, Dr. Nadia Aksir, with the John Hopkins Bloomsburg School of Public Health. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate that.
Thank you for having me. All the best.
Assalamu alaikum. Back to you, Hina. It's a terrible situation, but people can help.
Thank you so much, Imam Mujahid and Dr. Nadia Aksir. That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network News or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.